out a dirty old window. Down below, the cars in the city go rushing by. I sit here alone and I wonder why. Friday night and everyone's moving. I can feel the heat, but it's soothing, heading down. I search for the beat in this steady town. Downtown, the young ones are going. Downtown, the young ones are growing. We're the kids in America. Whoa. We're the kids in America. Whoa. Everybody lives for the music around.
All right. Welcome to Growing Up in America on KPFT Pacifica Radio. It's Dr. Bob Sanborn from Children at Risk. Seb Goncalves is with us as well. Seb, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's my last show here. So.
This is it?
This is it.
This is the last one, and then you're back to college?
Back to college, yeah.
And is there anything quite this exciting in college for you, Seb?
Not really.
This is it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is dating life, nothing compared to being on the radio show, right?
No, I'm excited for it. A lot of people dread their senior year, last year of college, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good one.
What are you going to do eventually, Seb? What do you think?
I want to work in sports
Yeah.
media. I'm kind of open to a lot of different things.
So this was a good experience
This
for
was
you
a great
then?
experience.
Yeah. So that's really good. What has been the highlight of your time doing these shows, Seb? I mean, outside of, co-hosting it with Claire.
I think it's very interesting to find guests.
That was a joke, Seb.
to come
You
on
should
the
have at
show.
least
But
laughed on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's all been great.
Yeah. You're excited about the co-hosts? And,
It's been a great experience.
Very good. Well, Seb and I are excited to do this hour. Growing Up in America is a production of Children at Risk, the voice for the children of Texas. And every week we aim to fill these same 60 minutes with lively discussion. And it will be lively today, Seb.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have a pretty good show. We're going to do our intern spotlight with Dylan Kessler, who's an intern at Children at Risk. Then we're going to go on to looking at mental health in our community. Lisa Thomas is here from the Thomas Counseling Center. We're going to be talking about student mental health. And as always, we'll have Dr. Data is in the studio today. Chris Kulesa is right here with us. And Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. So excited. This is your first time ever in the studio,
It
right?
is.
Very, very good. So we have some exciting data coming up. What is the percentage today we're supposed to be guessing at?
18.5.
18. Seb, you have an idea? 18.5?
I'm going to guess something involving attendance.
Yeah. We just had our Latino health press conference not too long ago, so 18.5. That would be low for any of the Latino health issues, though. I'll come around to it, though, Chris. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll have Dr. Data, Chris Kulesa is in the studio with us today. And then our thumbs up, thumbs down will be on school attendance policies, attendance tracking. And then our final thing and our extended segment, we're going to be talking about a special segment with key community leaders looking at sort of response to disaster, Beryl and some of the other things. Claudia Aguirre, who's the president and CEO of Baker Ripley, will be here in the studio with us. Also joining us via phone will be Brian Green, the president and CEO of the Houston Food Bank. And then Adrian Yam is going to be with us as well. He works with Claudia over at Baker Ripley. He's part of Head Start. So we'll be looking a little bit at the disaster that is seemingly disaster preparation in the greater Houston area and its impact on children. So coming up after the musical break, we'll be talking with Dylan Kessler, intern at Children at Risk. We'll be right back here on Growing Up in America. All right, time for Intern Spotlight. That is our Intern Spotlight theme music, I think. Is that right, Seb? That what we just heard? Is that?
Yeah, that's the one.
Very good. Dylan Kessler is with us. Dylan, how you doing, man? You there, Dylan? And we're getting Dylan right there's Dylan right there. How you doing, Dylan?
Yeah, I'm good. You can hear me all right?
Yeah, now we can. Very good.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I've had a pretty great summer. I'm just going back to school soon.
So, Dylan, where do you go to college?
I go to Duke University in Durham, North Carolina.
Seb, have you ever heard of Duke? I'm trying to place Duke.
Not really.
Aren't they more like a basketball school? Is that right, Dylan?
Yes, we are.
They're supposed to be, I think.
So I have visited the campus of Duke before, Dylan. It's like really, arguably one of the most beautiful campuses in America, isn't it?
It sure is.
Yeah, very good. What else can you respond to that? Dylan, tell me about what you've been working on this summer as an intern, because in a sense, all of our interns are like apprentice child activists. And for you, what has it been like, and what have you been working on?
Yeah, so I've worked primarily with Claire on a lot of early childhood education, policies and outreach. We there's a variety of partner organizations that I've been in contact with, such as in the Coaching Collaborative, working with a lot of other organizations who assist childcare providers, talking about new platforms that can sort of ease the job of these childcare providers, school districts. Also been doing a little bit of graphics and sort of Photoshop design for Claire, and also for the Texas Local Workforce Board mapping.
Hey, Dylan, when you think about the work that you've done this summer as a child activist, what stands out as maybe the most important issue that facing us as a community and as a society when it comes to kids?
It's a pretty good question. We do children at risk. There's a lot of policy, whether it be immigration, early childhood education. But through my research, I've really found the importance of early childhood education.
Yeah.
In my mom being a kindergarten teacher for the past 25, 30 years, I've really seen how much of an impact that it can have on people's lives. I mean, I just think of, our family being at dinner, and then one of her students will come up and they just, they get so excited to see her. And I just think it's really special, the impact that early child care providers can have on kids and really set them up for success for the rest of their lives.
And Seb, you have a hard-hitting question for Dylan?
Yeah, I just want to ask him about his high school experience here in Houston. What particular pathways or learning opportunities do you feel have prepared you for what you're doing currently, not just Children at Risk, but also at Duke?
Yeah, I think probably my biggest accomplishment, or what sort of prepared me for life the best in high school, was some of the activism work I did with Everytown for gun safety, specifically through Students Demand Action. I started a chapter at school with one of my good friends, and I gained skills in learning, how to start up an organization, how to gather support, how to put everyone's work and ideas together into actual tangible goals. So we went down to the Capitol a couple times to lobby and testify, and I think doing something that was sort of so uncomfortable for me at the time, being, a 16, 15-year-old and going to the Capitol, seeing all these important people, senators, whatever. I think that was, an experience that stands out to me in my high school, and that I think will help me jump further out of my comfort zone for the things I care about.
Dylan, one of the things we've asked, certainly I've asked all the interns on these little check-ins, is voting, right? And one of the things that we see in Texas is that a lot of young people are not voting. What is it for you? Do you think that there's new energy, now that it's not sort of two old white guys running against each other? Are you seeing more energy in terms of voting?
Oh, I absolutely do. I mean, just within my friends, even ones who I wouldn't consider to be super politically involved, people seem to be really excited about, Kamala and the new campaign, especially the news with Tim Walz yesterday. Me and my friends were sort of looking at TikTok. I think a lot of people have been looking at TikTok. I know Kamala has been pretty famous. She's been on a lot of people's For You pages there. So I think they're doing a really good job kind of engaging with young voters. And I think, and I don't know if this is wishful thinking, but I think young people are really going to turn out in this election.
Seb, do you agree? You think we're going to have more young people turning out?
Yeah, I think we should. Just the impact of technology overall has been so massive. But, with the positives, there's also negatives. And I want to ask you, Dylan, what do you think some of these negatives are with the amount of new media and just Instagram posts, TikTok posts, like surely there's some negatives there.
Yeah, I think there are some negatives because now with social media, specifically like Instagram or story posting, anybody can become an activist, at least in their own eyes. Or, people can post infographics, post news stories. But I think a downside is that one, people are so oversaturated with political news that you almost don't know what to pay attention to. And another part of that is I think it can be a little bit too passive sometimes if you're just posting on some social media platform. It's definitely much more important to get involved in person, hands-on, put in your time and energy. So I think those are probably the two main negatives I see with social media.
Dylan, as our final question, I want to ask you one of our fun questions. What did you want to be when you were a young Dylan Kessler? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I always wanted to be an architect, actually.
Wow.
I thought designing houses would be super cool, building them, seeing the whole process from start to finish. That dream has kind of, gone away a little bit, but I do still find architecture to be super interesting.
And what's your major now, Dylan?
I'm majoring in political science now.
There you go. That's much more useful, I think, than architecture in the end, right? To be a political scientist.
Yeah.
So, Dylan Kessler is an intern over at Children at Risk, and this has been our intern spotlight. Dylan, thank you very much for all that you've been doing this summer, and we wish you the best of luck as you get back to the halls at Duke University.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, Dylan. Coming up after our quick break, thumbs up, thumbs down. We're talking about school attendance policies. Should people be penalized for missing any school? Should we have mandatory school attendance? So Seb is like all about that mandatory school attendance. So we'll be right back with thumbs up, thumbs down.
It's time to try. Somewhere to start. No need to ask, he's a smooth operator. Smooth operator. Smooth operator.
Smooth operator. Seb, is that song's about you, isn't it? You're a smooth operator.
Yeah, they actually wrote it about me.
That song was written before you were born, I think, probably.
I think it was the day I was born. It came out.
So we're thumbs up, thumbs down, school attendance policies and attendance tracking. So there's a little bit of disagreement about how much mandatory school attendance. And I think this comes certainly after the pandemic, where we saw some students have done quite well with sort of remote learning. Other kids have done quite poorly with remote learning. Chris Kules is going to join us for this conversation. First off, Chris, I mean, when you think about the data, one of the things that we're burdened with is this idea that we've always tracked attendance, right? It's always been something that we've done. It's in Texas, it's how we are sort of reimbursed, how schools are reimbursed, daily average attendance rates, right? So when you think about school attendance, is it something that we should be making mandatory?
So that's a really good question. So it is important, of course, to make sure that students are attending, but we have to understand the underlying reasons as to why some students aren't attending, right? So after COVID-19, of course, we did see a bit of a relaxing, families going back to that online model or relying more on that online model. But most students aren't attending school because they don't want to attend school. It's because they're having issues at home and with the family. So I think that there is a difference in between those students that are saying, hey, I'm not interested, but if they have issues that are going on, I don't think it's fair for them necessarily to be punished for that.
Yeah.
And particularly for young children, too. I mean, I'll recall that young kids get punished for not attending when oftentimes they have no control over whether or not they're attending school or not.
Yeah. Do you think it should be mandatory, though, that kids, I mean, even if there's no punishments, school attendance, right?
I do think that there should be some level of mandatory.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I absolutely do.
Seb, what are you thinking on this issue? Was this your topic, by the way? Did you come up with this topic?
No, I think this was Andrew.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So talk about this. What do you think?
I think that it should be mandatory to a certain extent. Of course, there's some circumstances that does not allow these kids to attend school. the school districts and the schools themselves should offer some forms and, papers families can fill out and sign to say why they're not attending school, and then hopefully the school can provide those resources. But it should be mandatory.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that I think it should be mandatory. Maybe no penalties. I mean, teachers need to know why kids are missing because they can adjust accordingly. I think that's important. Yeah. But I'm going to be thumbs down to mandatory attendance, but thumbs up to attendance, right? So I think that's where we should be going. Chris, when you think about what happened after the pandemic with increasing numbers of kids not showing up, is that just parents who are feeling like their kids really weren't learning? What's going on there?
So I think that there's a couple different things, right? So one, of course, you had work models shift quite a bit. Just our entire life model shifted.
Absolutely.
So now we're having many more families that are finding that it's okay, to work at home, and they're still being able to hold on to their positions. But really just our entire focus really changed as to what attendance means, right? Or being there. Now we have so much reliance on Zoom and everything else. So with that being said, I think that there's just a different general approach to it and a general different attitude as to what it means to be present in these places. So, but with all of that being said, I do want to emphasize that there is something important about in-person learning and about being able to connect with your peers, right? There's so much, particularly for young kids, to be able to learn and understand with having personal interactions with their teachers, with their peers, those that really understanding how to make social connections and make social ties that really underscore the importance of having them show up in person if at all possible.
Yeah. Very good. That's our thumbs up, thumbs down. So are you a big thumbs up for attendance, right?
Thumbs up for attendance, but mandatory attendance, I think that's
mandatory without I mean, we want kids to go, but just no penalties for
right.
not going.
An asterisk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Hey, coming up after the break, we're going to be talking with Lisa Thomas, who's with the Thomas Counseling Center. She is a licensed practical counselor and focusing on student mental health. We're going to take a quick look at what is going on with student mental health in our schools. We'll be right back with Lisa Thomas.
When I think of you sometime and I want to spend some time with you, just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. Feeling candles in the sky. Just the two of us. You and I. We look for love, no time for tears.
All right. Lisa Thomas is with us, and Lisa is over at the Thomas Counseling Center, and we're excited to have her with us. And so, Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Doing well.
Absolutely. So, Lisa, when you think about mental health and children, give us an idea of what's going on with kids these days and how have their needs sort of evolved for students?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually been in two different settings. So I have a private practice as a licensed professional counselor here in the Cypress area of Houston. But prior to that was a school counselor.
Oh, yeah.
So in the school district with elementary and middle school students. So have worked in both settings and so have seen a lot of changes, obviously, since COVID. So I do think that we are still seeing some residual effects with COVID. I think that some of that comes with some of the things that we saw just with families shifting and concerns really rising during that COVID time. I think becoming more aware, maybe parents were seeing more aware of some of their students because they saw them all the time at home, some struggles that they were having. So I think that since then, students are still trying to adjust with the gaps that maybe they had when they might have been schooling from home. They did get behind academically, which then caused some anxiety coming back to school. And you saw a lot of shifts with their friend groups, which obviously for adolescents, even starting about third grade, that's when children start to really make that shift into their peers, very aware of their peers and what their peers think about them. So as they were coming back into the schools, there were gaps even in their friendships. And so when they were coming back, a lot of their friends, maybe if the parents had chosen to keep them at home for that whole stretch of time, friendships continued on without them. And so when they started coming back into school, they felt sort of displaced and still trying to kind of make up for some of that. And if you had students that might have already dealt with some social anxiety and then didn't have to use those social skills during COVID, they kind of lost some ground that they've still been having to make up for. So I think that, that increased some of that anxiety. Of course, fear of missing out really is a thing.
Yeah.
And so, definitely dealing with some of that heightened anxiety for sure.
Lisa, and working with students over the years and certainly with parents, what should parents, what are some of the warning signs for parents? And one of the things I always talk about is that you should be talking with your kids, start early, that communication, right? If you start in elementary school and before, then you've sort of, made the paths of communication easier. You can't start in high school, in other words. But let's say you have sort of this good communication going with your kids. What are the things you should be looking for in terms of when your child is going to sort of have some mental health needs?
Right. I think that, I do work with a lot of parents that they start noticing things and they start bringing them in. So I think what you're looking for is, there's obviously going to be just normal everyday things that come up and children will have reactions to those. And those behaviors are indicators of something that's going on further in them.
Yeah.
So because children, depending on their age, they don't necessarily have the skills to verbalize always what it is that they're trying to say, so it's going to come out in their behaviors. So when parents will come to see me, it's usually because there's been a shift in their behavior, whether they're noticing that they're becoming more irritable or they're easily irritated more so, or some things, activities that they used to really find enjoyment in, they're maybe finding that they're not enjoying anymore. Or they're struggling maybe with their eating, their sleeping is off. They maybe aren't reacting the way that they used to. So any kind of shifts, and then when you kind of look at, okay, this would be what would be normal at this age, these would be normal responses. If you're seeing that those responses are out of whack, so to speak, a lot of times you'll see parents go, "Hey, I want to get ahead of this before it becomes an issue," or "I want to learn as a parent better ways to communicate." And a lot of times, then because children typically, they have it in them. They don't want to disappoint their parents, or they don't know even a lot of times how to vocalize what they need. What the counseling center then is so just having that objective person who's not a mom or a dad, where they really feel like, hey, I can talk about some of these things. And like that, I'll say, maybe it feels like you're like this Rubik's Cube and things just feel all mixed up inside. Like you've just been twisted in all different ways and you can't make sense of it and it feels overwhelming. Well, let's just take it out and put it in the middle of the floor and let's just sort it out in a space where you can just be you and figure you out. And then let's learn ways to then communicate that with your parents.
Yeah,
we're practicing that in here so that you can take it out into your real world.
Yeah, that's very good. Seb?
Hi, Lisa. So how can parents and teachers support these students who are experiencing mental health challenges when, they can't afford to talk to an expert or have these, resources available to them?
Right. Absolutely. And I think that that's why the school counselors are such a vital role in the schools because of that, because they're going to be the first line of defense for those students that may never walk into a counseling center. And so, my role as a school counselor was so important in that, helping support the teachers and allowing the teachers to truly have that space to get to know their students. To really want to be involved. I talk to so many students that just talk about, and when we talk about a support network, I talk about that a lot with students. Who are those people in those different areas of your life that you can go to? And so what I talk about, because they spend most of their day at school, So, who is that at school that you is your go-to person? Maybe it's the cafeteria person. Maybe it's that, first teacher for first period, or that one teacher even from last year that just took you knew that they saw you and didn't just say hi, but took an interest in you. Because all of us want to be seen. We want to know that somebody truly gets us and understands us. And that is like that at home too. As parents, I want to listen to you. I want to hear what you have to say, because what you have to say is important. And I may not agree with it, and we might talk about that, but I want you to know that you're seen.
Lisa, we just had a press conference where we were talking about Latino health, and we talked about mental health. And one of the things that we know is that in terms of counselors in the schools per student, the greater Houston area, the national average is 250 kids per every counselor. The greater Houston area is over 900. And right. What you and I both know is that a lot of those counselors are given a lot of administrative duties and don't have time to do counseling.
Yes, they do. Right.
Talk a little bit about that, because Texas is at the bottom of the list, right? We do a very poor job, but you've been a school counselor. How frustrating is it for counselors in the schools when they can't get to all the needs that students have?
Oh, I feel it. The district that I was in is a very, very, very large district. And, the percentage of, counselor per student is it's a challenge. Absolutely. Yeah. And you are given so many other administrative duties. And so that was always our push, because our heart as staff members, period, in the schools is to be there for the kids first and their families. And so it is definitely a delicate balance. And there are seasons of the school year that just are more difficult and challenging to be able to meet those needs, because students just need to know that they've got somebody in their corner, that they've got a place they can come and just be and have that support. Because, like I said, that's where they're spending most of their day.
Wow.
Is there.
Lisa Thomas is with the Thomas Counseling Center. She is a counselor. She's been working in the schools. She works private practice. Lisa, thank you very much for your insights on mental health. A lot of work for us to do, but thanks you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. Take care. You're listening to Growing Up in America on KPFT Pacifica Radio. Coming up after the break, we're going to be talking with our Dr. Data, Dr. Christopher Kulesa from the Baker Institute at Rice. And then after that, we're going into our extended community roundtable. We're going to be focusing with Claudia Aguirre, who's the CEO of Baker Ripley, the largest social service nonprofit in Houston, and Brian Green, the largest food bank in the world. He's the CEO here in Houston, and we'll be talking to them both about how did we respond? How was the collaborative response to Hurricane Beryl? But first up, after the break, we'll be back with Dr. Data. We'll be right back here on Growing Up in America. All right, you're listening to Growing Up in America. I'm Bob Sanborn, along with Seb Goncalves. We're here, and it's time for Dr. Data, the data of the day. Chris Kulesa is with us from Rice University's Baker Institute. Chris, the number today, 18.5.
Yes, 18.5%.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess it's something around Latino children. The percentage that are missing school is going to be my guess. What are you saying, Seb?
Yeah, that's probably my guess as well.
Okay.
Something about attendance.
Tell us how wrong we are, Chris.
All right, so 18.5%, that is the percentage of children that are food insecure across the United States.
Wow, and that's across the United States. What does it mean to be food insecure?
So food insecure means essentially, looking at the formal definition, that any time that a child is looking for food, that they're going hungry, that their family does not have the resources or the funds to be able to purchase food, right? Mm-hmm. So when we're thinking about food insecurity, we're thinking about just the ability to get food.
Yeah.
A bit separate, however, is also the concept of nutrition insecurity. So the idea being that are children getting the nutritional needs that they actually have to have? So when we're thinking about this particular number, it's really looking at just the ability to afford food, whatever it may be, not really talking about just the nutrition aspect of it.
And where this becomes important, right, is we've heard a lot over the last couple of days about people attacking the governor of Minnesota because he signed some free school lunch programs. But frankly, Republican governors all across America have been doing the same thing. And it's the idea of using this U.S. Department of Agriculture money that's available to us. And many times it's not used efficiently.
Right. No, and very good point with that. So right now we have 15 states that have refused to sign up for the summer EBT program. So
Texas being one of them.
Texas being one of them. So what's really nice about this program, of course, during the school year when you're having free and reduced lunch, it requires children to be on site generally in order to be able to get food. But now 15 states, largely in the South where you need the most support, have said that they're not going to sign up for this program. And of course, it's particularly convenient for families because they don't need to be out of school to be able to get it. And you're asking, I hate to put it in this directly, but you are really asking for trouble when you're talking about your long-term health and even your economic viability as a state. I mean, food insecurity, of course, is linked to reduced mental health. It is linked to higher obesity rates. It's linked to higher problems with long-term health. So if you're not tackling food insecurity with children at a young age, you're only inviting problems a lot later in a child's development into adulthood. So it really should be states looking out for their kids to say, we're making investments now so we could potentially save it money later.
Yeah. That's very good. Seb, you have a question for Dr. Data?
Yeah, why are these states refusing to implement these programs?
So there are a couple different reasons, right? Fundamentally speaking, there is an ideological, right? The idea being that what is really the role of government? Should government really be stepping into this? There's also the question about the federal budget, right? And indeed, the federal budget is very high, and we do have a very large federal budget deficit, right? And eventually, that is something that is going to need to be addressed. However, at the end of the day, you have to really think about what are your priorities, and you have to really understand, okay, yes, we might have a federal budget deficit, but again, getting back to
should we do it on the backs of poor kids,
should
though, right?
Should we
kids.
be doing it right on the backs of children? So with all of that being said, this is an area where I would definitely say that the cost-benefit analysis should be to be investing in our children at a young age.
That's absolutely right. When we think about, final question then, Dr. Data, when we think about food insecurity and children, is there, is there one thing in Texas that we could be doing that would make life really better for children and make them significantly less food insecure?
If I could wave a magic wand, I would say that it'd be universal free and reduced lunch across all school districts if possible. I know that there are budgetary considerations with that, but that would most definitely be one thing that we can do.
I think another key thing in Texas, right, is just access to those government funds that are already available, right? If we did more of that, it's not like we have to spend more money than we have. We're just not using the stuff that's available sometimes.
And destigmatizing, right? Destigmatizing and making sure that those programs are available to populations. In some cases, signing up for them can be just very administratively difficult and time-consuming for families. So making sure that they are indeed easily to be accessed.
Very good. Dr. Data, Chris Kulesa has been with us. He's with Baker Institute at Rice University. And Chris, you'll be back next week with another scintillating piece of data for us?
That I will be.
All right, very good. We'll be right back. Hey, coming up after the break, we're going to be doing a double segment focusing on our response to the hurricane and to catastrophe here in Houston. Claudia Aguirre is here in the studio with us. She's the CEO of Baker Ripley. Also joining us via phone will be Brian Green, the CEO of the Houston Food Bank, and Adrian Yam, who heads up a lot of the Head Start programs over at Baker Ripley. We'll be right back here on Growing Up in America.
Back on the boogie when cats used to harmonize like, back on the boogie when cats used to harmonize like, back on the boogie when cats used to harmonize like, back on the boogie when cats used to harmonize like.
All right, we're back here on Growing Up in America. With us in the studio is Claudia Aguirre, who is the president and CEO of Baker Ripley. Claudia, how you doing, by the way?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Very good, very good. And then joining us by phone, Brian Green, from the CEO of the Houston Food Bank. Brian, you doing well?
It's very good to be on here, Dr. Bob, on this nice, pleasantly warm day.
Hey, Brian.
Pleasantly warm.
Hello, Claudia.
And then also Adrian Yam is with us. Adrian is the Senior Director of Head Start over at Baker Ripley. Adrian, how you doing, man?
Doing very well. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Very good.
Hey, Adrian.
Hey.
So, Claudia, since you came down to the studio, I'll ask you first. I mean, how did we do and how do we do in general? Because I had a conversation earlier today about disasters and catastrophes and weather disasters in Houston, and it does seem like, you know, they used to be less often,
right.
But they're happening more often now. We should be getting better at them. And after Beryl, I'm not sure we are.
Well, you know, I think Beryl taught us a lot of lessons that we hadn't that we hadn't learned. But, you know, I say this, it's easier to call on a friend to ask something than to call someone you don't know and ask them. So the preparation has to be around. I mean, I would say like Brian and his team, they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, they did.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
And that is because they have very deliberate and purposeful engagement all year long. You can't expect to be an organization like ours and come into the picture to do disaster. And I would say that, you know, that's why it worked really well with Baker Ripley and Food Bank, because every month, you know, we partner and we bring food over to our neighborhoods. Now, going back to how did we do, you know, I think there was so many things out of our hands that really made it tough, you know. No electricity, no Wi-Fi, no technology. Those are just things that you just can't expect or plan for.
Yeah. And just being without electricity and hence AC in our city is just very, very tough on families.
Yeah, I would say that was probably the toughest part. I mean, we opened up cooling stations. There was overnight shelters. But, you know, you're 75 years old in your house. You don't want to leave.
Yeah.
And so you're there. You know, you have a family of 9. It just... Cooling stations are wonderful, but there is just no way to get folks out of this heat and into a cooling place. There just really is no way.
Yeah. Brian, what's your assessment? I mean, we have all been through a number of disasters working together. I mean, how did we do on this one compared to previous ones?
Well, everyone is different, and something that people forget about Beryl is, you know, that thing changed course over a holiday weekend.
Yeah.
So sympathy to Centerpoint, as well as a lot of organizations that like to get back into planning mode and to get your staff ready and everything over a holiday weekend is dramatically different than when you've got warning as you normally have in a hurricane. So I would say that it wasn't just utilities or work, you know, that was kind of a little delayed. It was almost all the efforts. So we normally would be expected to get called to supply shelters of last resort. And so we were waiting, and all the way to Sunday, late Sunday before, like 8 o'clock, before we just went to our ride-out crew, we were like, okay, they're going to call us. And nobody ever called us. But again, it's so different than when they've got their workforce and their planning. So it got off to, I think, a later start.
Yeah.
And then getting organizations to convene, especially when they lose their power. So many organizations, it's hard for them to respond when they don't have power either. And so we're trying to get a hold of, you know, other, you know, charities and such and saying, look, you don't need power. All you need is a parking lot. We'll get it to you. But so, like, there was a lot of lag there as well. So, yeah, it was probably not great. I think the organizations as a whole, the nonprofit sector, got its act together by late in the week, but I wish it was faster.
Yeah. Adrian, you were going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was going to say that I can appreciate all the challenges we had. It just goes to show that I would not grade communication, give it a good grade.
Yeah.
I think communication is the most critical. We can all appreciate things moving and changing and opening up late, not having electricity, not having a generator. We've got to come together as a city and a region, decide on a mode of communication and who is responsible. We have electeds, we have OEM, we had nonprofits, we had every Centerpoint. We had everyone sending out communications, and who was receiving it? No one. I mean, the regular mode of communication just is not going to work during disasters.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think what's interesting that this disaster, I've heard a lot more during disasters than we did during this one. It just seemed there's something off, right, in terms of that communication. And maybe that everyone
we didn't
was
have electricity.
Electricity, internet. But I had, at work we had it, and I still was not getting anything. Adrian, when it comes to kids, right, you're at Head Start. You're working with a lot of families. One of the things that we've always known, and Claudia, Brian, and I have talked about this, is that for children, it's getting back to routine, right? That's the thing that you need when you have a disaster. How quickly can you get back to routine? How tough was it for you and Head Start, and you seeing other kids in other programs around the city? How tough was it getting back to that routine?
Yeah, first of all, this last disaster happened when we were on summer vacation.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that we know during times of disaster is that the way we respond as adults is going to also frame how our children respond. So usually during any time of disasters, we have all of our case managers able to connect with all of our families and make sure that we assess what are the basic needs that are missing. So as long as we are able to get them to that basic needs routine, we are able to have those children be able to adjust better. So remember that in our Head Start program, we serve the most vulnerable populations, and most of them, work hourly. So by the loss of wages, it's also a long-term effect on them to get on their feet. So by working with the stress that the families have, the adults have, that's one of the strategies that we can help the children get into the routine as faster or as much as possible. Whenever they come back to the centers, that's when we try to assess more about where they are behaviorally and also emotionally, and also working with the families to refer them to existing resources by zip codes.
Adrian, do you find that it's tough to sort of get the public worked up about this idea that we need to get low-income families and their kids back to routine when everyone is very worried about having their own electricity and their own AC?
Yeah, I think that's an important point because we know that the children from high-income families are going to respond better because of the access to resources. So that focus is something that I think we bring to the community of paying attention to that group holistically.
Claudia?
And I would say, Brian, that Bob, that attendance, as you were talking earlier, it's a financial, it's a get back to routine. And when these storms happen and the kids are out, that's less of a work to do. But during school, parents aren't going to worry about that as much as the urgency of basic needs of water in their house. They've got 4 inches of water. They've got to remove this. They got to throw this. They got to clean this. It is, and so the kids stay home. Yeah. And when kids stay home, it just does not get us back to a routine that we need to.
And I remember a couple of hurricanes ago when we were seeing some deaths. Those deaths were all from kids who weren't going back to school because HISD hadn't opened or school districts hadn't opened, and they were getting themselves into trouble and getting into danger, which happens a lot.
That's when one of the things that we think about disasters is the impact it has on kids. And we talk about how do we prepare. It's a year-round preparation, folks. We've got to figure this out and do some weekly, monthly, quarterly stuff and really look at kids as the center of our families. But, you're talking about how do you get food, how do you get electricity, how do you stay cool, how do you do this, how do you do that? And preparation, conversations. We've got the best nonprofit sector in the country, as I know it, right?
Yeah.
We've got some great and faith-based organization, elected officials that we can figure this out. I don't think we have figured it out, but we need to.
Yeah, and we've had changes too as we've gone on. But one of the things I wanted to ask you and Brian specifically, and Brian, I'll start with you. when we have, when we had Hurricane Ike, a number of years ago, Brian, we were able to go out and do fundraising for Hurricane Ike and say, okay, the country needs to support us. And when we had Harvey, the same thing. But now that disasters are becoming more frequent and they're happening in other parts of the country, how hard is it for you at the food bank and then you, Claudia Baker Ripley, to raise money to address disasters? Brian?
Yeah, it's absolutely true that and Ike would be a great example of that, where we were able to get support from the rest of the country, and that helped us tremendously. Whereas in Beryl, now that basically the whole country is dealing with tornadoes and other weather events more frequently, the ability to pull money in from outside of our community is dramatically different now than it was before. Now, fortunately, we've got a very generous community, so we were able to raise almost $2 million to support, the work in this disaster. Of course, when you're doing disaster spending, we just blow through that money so fast. But that's pretty good. I mean, so the community hasn't changed. It's just our ability to pull in resources from outside the community, I think, is what is different. And that's just because too much of the rest of the country is worried about weather events in their own backyard.
And I would say also, adding to that, is that United Way and the Greater Houston Foundation, have been working, and they put up this Disaster Alliance fund that, will really help folks find a place if they want to donate. And then they are in charge of delivering and disseminating it to nonprofits. But I'm going to go back to the year-round. Disaster recovery doesn't just happen the day after the disaster. It means we need, when they say, hey, Claudia, can Baker Ripley stand up a Red Cross shelter, or can we, do this? Yeah. That meant we needed folks that are working with Brian all year long. That means that we're working with other organizations all year long. We're working with communities to get them to trust us, because there's nothing worse than asking a community, hey, one day after the disaster, come and see us. You can sleep here. You can come and have a cooling station here. You need the trust of a community. So year-round raising money is tough, and particularly because people don't see it connected to disaster recovery.
It's interesting that you raise this, because when we just had the odd disaster, right, we sort of got together and we planned for it. But now that disasters are sort of a regularity, we really do need sort of an infrastructure, right? That's sort of, let's go to the disaster. It's going to happen this year, or we're going to have it twice next year. I mean, but someone pointed out to me that we've had 10 major events in Houston over the last 10 years. And I think in one of those years it was 3 events, right? But I think we're having a lot of these. And this is not just Houston. This is even in areas that didn't have disasters.
No, that's right. And so when do we stop talking about preparing, and when do we start,
let's
figure out what we're going to do? What's the infrastructure?
Yeah.
I was surprised that generators is it was the theme. So organizations, the city, we've got to figure out how generators get to the folks that are going to be doing this work. We've got to make sure that we've got the volunteers set up in one location. When people want to volunteer, it's kind of hard to take a phone call from someone. How do I help you in the middle of putting up beds and cots for folks who are trying to sleep? So how do we get volunteers trained, put through the system? How do we get dollars in the system? How do we get resources through the system? That's the infrastructure we need.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, when it comes to food insecurity, how much of a disruption is this for, well, I know it's a big disruption for low-income families, but how long does it take for families to get back on their feet where they're not food insecure any longer after these big disasters come through our community?
Well, it varies very significantly. So, according to the Kinder Institute in Houston, 46% of households don't have $400 they can call upon in an emergency. So, as the guy from Rice was pointing out, that the food insecure households, are having struggles just paying their bills, and so when they lose a week's worth of income, that can be quite devastating. And so you think about how poverty is expensive. So if you don't have the money to pay your bills today, well, now guess what? You're now gonna have a late fee or a reconnect fee on top of it. So when you look at how hard it is going to be make up, say, a $500 gap that the storm created, that for some families could literally take months.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Adrian, how about on your end? I mean, how long does it take kids to sort of get back to normal after a big disruption like this in terms of that recovery time, that long-term impact?
Yeah, I think that what was mentioned before is also aligned with what I would say. It takes time. It takes a village, like we say. We start by, giving the nurturing environment that we are able to be as nurturing as possible with these children, and then working with the families. I think it takes, usually they say between 6 and 8 weeks of at least a clear routine before they can start with where they were pre-disaster. But whenever there's a major disaster with traumatic events, it takes up to I think it's between 6 and 8 months, but what research tells us about traumatic events.
Yeah, or longer.
And we say, you and I, Bob, it will take us 3 weeks to call our insurance, to clean out the refrigerator, to hire a contractor to take out the carpet, But our families, we saw it in Harvey. 5 years, we were still working on rebuilding this. And when you're a household in neighborhoods that get flooded every time there's a disaster, whether it was wind, rain, or infrastructure, and so it is 9 months at a minimum for families to just make up what they lost in food, and then it will take them at least 1 to 3 years to do anything to their house if it got destroyed.
And we think about COVID and the pandemic as sort of putting our life on hold, but in a sense, some of these disasters, it's not your life on hold. It's like, how do I get back up to speed? And if we have them over and over again, I can't imagine people that live out in Meyerland or some of those people that get flooded time and time again, right? It's a tough deal.
And 27% of our families work retail, hospitality, and so when they close, we don't get a job. We don't get a paycheck. So it isn't, as we've got to look at it from their eyes. When they can't go to work, they don't get their $800 a week, and that clearly just sets them back months and months.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go to our Fast Five as we round out our hour here. Seb's going to help me out a little bit on this. But Claudia, I'll start with you. Your favorite book as a child? I'm going to do the same for you, Brian and Adrian, so be ready.
Él es el amor.
Él es amor.
Right, because I'm Mexican and grew up in Mexico, and so it is the story of God and Jesus and the difference and the similarities, and so my mom read it to me every night.
Él es el amor.
Él es el amor.
Él es el amor.
He is love.
Brian, was that your favorite book as well?
No, but Go Dog Go was. I love the pictures.
Adrian, what was your favorite book as a kid?
I want to say had several, but I guess it stands out this morning. El Principito, The Little Prince, just because of the message it brings to.
El Principito. Where did you grow up, Adrian?
I originally from Belize.
Belize, and you liked El Principito?
Yes, that has always been my favorite. I guess since I was in like 6th grade and elementary school and high school, that was the best.
All right. I'm going to ask you one more round, and then I'm going to let Seb ask a question. Brian, I'll start with you. Your favorite meal that your mom would make for you as a kid?
Chili pie.
Chili pie. Very good. That's different than Frito pie, right?
Very different. It was a Bisquick crust with all meat chili inside.
Wow. All right. Claudia, how about you?
It's what still gets me in trouble, flautas.
Flautas. Wow. Who doesn't like a good flauta? Come on. Flautas para la flaca.
Yeah.
So, Adrian, how about you?
In my case, it was what we call rice and beans. That's done with coconut milk.
Nice. All this good food. Chili pie, I'm still on the fence on, but I love good chili pie, and anything made with Bisquick has got to be good. Seb, you got a good question for us?
Yeah, I'm going to ask, what's one language that you would like to learn?
Claudia.
Urdu.
Urdu. Wow.
We have so many families in our Gulfton Center where I spend the best times of my day, and I would really, really love to be able to communicate with them.
I would love to learn Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, having gone to China and so a couple of times now, I would love to. How about you, Brian?
Spanish, definitely. I am so inadequate. I so regret that, like in high school, it was like, oh, take French. What the heck?
Exactly.
Spanish I need.
And of course, Claudia and I just laugh at you now.
Yeah.
Oh, Spanish. Oh, you're so simple, Brian. Adrian, how about you?
I'm with you, also Chinese, just because I guess there's a large population there and they're growing as a superpower.
Yeah, very good. Hey, I want to thank you, Claudia, very much for all the work that you and your whole team do at Baker Ripley. Brian Green over at the Houston Food Bank, thank you, guys. You do such great work. Your team does so good, so well there, Brian. Thank you so much. And Adrian, thanks for all the work that you do with Head Start. We so appreciate it. So thanks all of you for being on our roundtable. We'll do it again. I really want Claudia or Brian to sort of co-host at some point. So I know you want to.
I'm absolutely in.
Yeah, very good.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Seb, thank you very much. Thanks for your last show.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Very good. And we'll see everyone here again on Growing Up in America.
Thanks, Dr. Bob.
I hopped off the plane at LAX with a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna